Okay, thank you for coming to the Impact Weekly Wednesday webinar. Today we're going to go into details about scripting and automation. So what is scripting and automation? Well, automation is a big word. Let's break it down into its smaller components, scripting. Scripting is event-driven or data-driven events that create part of the automation package. So first thing, let's go to the rentals table. And inside of rentals, let's go and open this up. On this rentals table, I have a very simple script, automation in here, which takes the start date and the end date and gives us our days total and calculates the amount per day. So if I come and change this and they say, okay, they needed a shorter time frame, and I hit the tab key, you'll see that the automation calculated 26 days and of course lowered the amount. So let's go and see how that is happening. So up here at the top, I have a design button. And as you can see, if the screen is too narrow, it kind of hides the buttons. But if you just drag it to the right, you're going to get into the designer. So here we are in Impact's Designer. And inside of our designer, at the top, we have our scripting. So let's click on the scripting. And you'll see it opens up our scripting automation options at the bottom. And inside of here, I have one called rental calculations, and I'm going to open that up. And here is the script. Now, it might look a little complex, but it's really not. It basically is saying, get the days, times it by the per day, and set a value, right? Inside the scripting engine, if you see two backslashes, that's a comment. That's not actually a script. That's just notation inside of here. And then the fields, the rows, without that are the actual script. So what this script is doing is, first it's getting our total days, which is the start date minus the end date. Then it's seeing if we have a positive, because if we put the start date before the end date, we inform the users, hey, end date cannot be before the start date. So we're just doing a double check here that they did a value. We don't have to check the value. I'm going to take this out for a second. And really, it's two parts. It's getting the total days, and then it's saying set the value, this is the script, in the rentals table of a field called amount. That's this field down here. And what the field amount is our per day, which is this per day field, and it's in brackets, that's how we know it's a field, per day times total days. So total days was calculated up here. So that's it. So it became 24 times 75, and that set the value. When you're inside of here, you can say show preview. And what this show preview does is it actually takes those fields, like this field, and then this is a field here. And what the show preview does is shows our actual values inside of here. It's a great way to kind of do a little debugging to see if you're doing, is X greater than Y or Y greater than X, things like that. Once we're done here, we'll just say allow editing and change this back and forth. So it's a toggle. Once you're done with it, you can then run your test. So if I click on run test, it ran the test and it came back and it said, okay, script passed last time this. So what that's telling us is that script is going to run. Say if we put in some bad, juju in here, right? And we typoed something or we had something wrong and we said run test, it's going to tell us, oh, can't run it. There's an error on line 6. And that's what's showing us right here on line 6. So it knows where your mistake is and you can go back and put it on there. So say we had set value and we put in a bunch of X's by accident, run the test, line 10, set value XX, it does not exist. And then I'd say, oh, I put in X's there by accident and run the test. And the test passed. Okay, let's do something or show you something a little more complicated. And let's say okay to this. Let's go to the mortgage table. And inside of the mortgage table, I open this up, and we have basically about 8 fields, 1, 2, 3, 6 fields that are used to calculate a monthly payment. So if this was, say, $550, they got a better deal, and I hit tab here, you can see that it's recalculated for us. And maybe they decided only to put $75,000 down. We can see that the monthly payment went up to $7,000. And the reason they put less down in here is because they got a much better rate, and now they're paying monthly $6,800. And let's go in and see this one. Again, much like the calculating the days, it's down here. We go to scripting. We go to the mortgage calculator. And I'm just going to make this a little bit wider or bigger so we can see. When you're inside and looking at this, if you hold your control key down and use the mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. So you might want to zoom. It might be too small, might be too big. I just zoomed in and out. What this calculation is doing is it's using not just the calculation of days, but it's using the loan amount, down payment, interest rate, 6 of these values, and these values are taken from fields called amount, down payment, interest, years. And let's just show preview. So there's our 550, our 75,000, our 4.785. So we know that we're pushing in the right data. And it does the same thing here where it first gets those values and then it creates a field called payment based on this mortgage calculator. Now, I'm not a mortgage guy. What I did, I noted it up here. What I did is I just went into a website. I'll bring this over here. And I did a search in Google mortgage calculations, and it gave me this website, and this was how it calculated. So that's the standard mortgage banking industry of calculating the payments. Again, I just copied that out of here, and I put it straight into here. Okay, let's close this down. And we're going to close this down. All right, let's go on to the contact screen. Again, this is called the Act Demo Scripting Database. It'll be public on our website. And you can download it and all this code is in there. But inside of this database, if we go and click on a down arrow here, I have some examples here of layout. So let's go to this example 1 basic layout. Now on this layout, I'm trying to put arrows here to show you where the scripting automation is. Like here is one value, it's year to date. So on the contact record there's a field called year to date, and we have a script that will actually it'll look at a company record, find all the contacts attached to that company, sum up the values of the year to date of the contacts into a roll up into the company table. So it's live, it's in real time, and it shows you year to date. That's one example. Another example here, I'm going to just quickly remove this stuff here, just to kind of roll back. As you know, ACT has a ability to attach a company to a contact or a contact to a company. Well, we might be using multiple companies. This might be a real estate transaction, and you have the buyer's attorney, the seller's attorney, the mortgage company. You may have 8 different participants, 8 different companies involved in here. So I created a script here. First, I created a field called Company 2, and I say attach Company 2. So this is a list of all the companies in the ACT database. So I'm going to say T-Bone Steakhouse. So now T-Bone Steakhouse is attached. Company 3 is called ABB, and Company 4 is called Swing Software. So I now have those attached in here, and of course I can change them at any time. But I also want to look those records up. Like I want to go to T-Bone Steakhouse. I could say, well, look up company 2. And there it is. We're looking at T-Bone Steakhouse. I go back. I want to go to Swing Software. And there's Swing Software. And again, here's that year-to-date roll-up. But let's go back to here. So that's one way to write a script for automation. We also have a button on here. So let's click on this button. And what this button is, it brings up the map to 13 Arlington, Suite 304, New York. And that's what we're looking at. It's a map. But again, this is just a simple script. So let's go in and look at some of these scripts. As you know, when you were on the rentals record or something in here, you got to the designer by going here. That's true. Anytime you're on a custom table, that's how you get to the designer. When you're on the contact record, you go to the tools and you say design layouts. Now, this is the old one. This is Act 1. So if I wanted to go into design, yes, I can go into Act Editor. But we designed a much more robust editor. So underneath the tools menu, design layouts, you're going to see impact contact. So let's go into that layout editor. And again, this is the layout editor that we saw for the custom table. So if you know how to do it in the custom tables, you know how to do it everywhere. And we're going to go to the scripting inside of here. And I'm just going to resize some of this stuff just to give us a better little view. So here's all the different scripts. So here I have a script. Let's go and look at this. Very simple script. It's called, I gave it a name, birthday and month. And what it's doing is that set value, which we saw earlier, we want to set the value of the contact record, the field called birthday and month, and we want to find the month of his birthday, which if you're born in July, which would be 7. So if I say show the preview, well, it's actually December 12. So this will return a value of 12 into the birthday month. Let's look at another one. Background color. Okay, this one may look a little more complex, but it's pretty straightforward. Here, let's just see what it's doing. So what this is doing, in essence, is it changes the background color of the contact based on the ID. So here's where we get into some automation. This is data-driven because we're using the ID status field, but it's also kind of an interface-driven thing. So what we're doing here is we're saying get the panel that we're going to colorize, which happens to be called panel detail. That's the ACT terminology. And we're saying after we get the panel detail, then get the ID status field. Again, the same way we calculated total number of days, we're saying give us the status field out of the ID status. And then we say, hey, if they're an influencer, make the panel, this panel, which we found up here, make it red, make it green, make it blue. So it changes the background. So let's close this down, and let's just see that in action. So if I go and look up another record, you'll see, oh, the background's green because they're a prospect. If I click on next, oh, the background's orange because they're a customer. And again, that happened based on that script. And again, back to scripts, and that was background color. And I have a capital O here. I'll just change that, lowercase. And that's the script that does it. Now, there's two ways to do scripting. One, of course, is data-driven. That's what we're doing down here. We're saying if data X equals Y, do this or do that. But we can also have event-driven or click-driven events. Like here is that button inside of here. And if I go to the properties of that button, there's script underneath that button. And this script, pretty much it's 2 lines. We're just making it read easier. We're saying get the address of the contact, which is address 1, city, state, and zip. Once we have the address, then we're saying, hey, pass that address to Google. So this is what we're talking about, system diagnostic start, how Impact opens up the .NET framework and we can do anything we want inside of here. So we can actually launch Google from inside of ACT and pass it parameters to look up the address field. That's all done right inside of here. And in order to have one of these buttons on the screen, if we go over to here, go to our buttons, down here we have a button that's button create script. So I'm going to bring this over, drag it onto the screen, and drop it. Here's our script editor, and inside of here, we can type whatever we want to. We copy and paste, do whatever we want. But down at the bottom of here, we actually have the events already done for you. So if you wanted to do, an action in a menu, like I want to create a phone call, that's the button event. So I'm just going to put in button create call. And then after I create a call, I want to create a history. So I'm going to say create and edit the history. All right? So there it is. So there's my script. So again, it just starts out script, create an activity called phone call. Here's script, edit the activity called call. The result is the call attempted and the parameter check-in. That's the notes parameter. So we can do some pretty advanced stuff in here. And if I come along here and say run the test, well, there's the call it just created. Now, this is our own edit activity form. It's not ACT's, and there's ways you can do that. We get into that later. And I can say, yes, okay, create that call. And then here is my history. So I said it was a call attempted history. I'll put in my notes in here, and I can say, okay, and those two events happened. So this is a part of the automation that you can start to do. Let's save and close. That is underneath this button called Run Script. If I want to get back to that script, just go to the properties. There it is. If I want to change the image or that for a user, I can say, new users button, and I could say selected image or my new user button. I'm just going to select a little checkbox image. You can select any image you want. Now that I have that done, as you can see, I have a button here that I can put anywhere on the screen so that people doing data entry follow a workflow. Okay, let's get rid of this. Let's look at a couple of these other ones while I'm inside of here. Here's one. I get this a lot. It is dates. You want to say, oh, I entered in this date. You first purchase it, but his subscription runs out in 3 years. So that's what this script does. It says, get the value in the contact table, a field called first purchase, and then add 3 years to that first purchase. And it's going to return that value into the subscription field. Right? So this was done, get value, add fields, just by going into our date time functions and using some of our date time functions down here. Again, if you remember, I was on here at the actions and I said create a call. But if I come down here and say date time functions, I could say I want to add years. So add years to one date and then the amount of years we want to add. If I want to add months, I want to see the date difference between two fields. Here's that date difference, which gave us our calculation for the rentals table. So the start date and the end date. If you go down here, you're going to find a lot of other functionality inside of here, where you could say, of course, date time we were just on, things like, oh, I want today's date. Operators, you can say things are between or greater than. You can do the multiplication. Fields, this is how you just get a field value. So I want to go into the contact table and I want address 1 field. And it gives it to you. Remember, the fields are in the bracket. So we don't have to know all the fields. We can just find them in here. And this will list your fields in your current database. So there you go. If you have a field called XXXX, it'll be inside of there. Get value again. So say I want to do get the value of a field. So I'm going to say contact get value. I'm going to double click on it, and it's field to get. So I want to get the address 1 field. That's it, simple enough. And there it is. It pastes it in for us. Get value of the contact table in field called address 1. Very simple. If I wanted to set the value, I could type it in, set value, contact, address field 1, and then I need the parameter. I'll say, new address 1 field. Now, you would never do that in an address field. You may do it in some other conditions, but you wouldn't be hard coding an address field in there. Logical values. So you may say, I want to do a calculation, and the calculation is if state equals New Jersey, it's, I don't even know our state tax right now, 7.5, and it's New York, it's 8.25. So you can start doing conditional things like that and say, if a field, and let's just make this a little bit bigger, get the field value. So I would say, instead of 3, I would say, get value. I'll type it out here. Get value, I'll say, of the contact table, and I want the state field. So A is going to equal NJ, NY, or whatever. Then we can say, well, if A equals New Jersey, then do X. I'm just giving you some examples inside of here of how robust this is and how your workflow patterns can be based on your data entry that's inside of ACT, and it'll create a phone call if he's in New Jersey, schedule a meeting if he's in New York, and so forth. Here's one. Let's just take this to, not to the extreme, but this one was asked me the other day. Users wanted to have a field called the contact ID that shows the contact GUID, the global unique ID, GUID, inside of a field. So what I did, I just wrote this little script here, and this at the top, this gives us a progress bar, which you're going to see in a second. But this is really pretty basic. I want to get the field descriptor called my contact ID. So I now have the field called my contact ID. And I'm going to loop through all the contacts in the table. And I am going to say, set the value of the contact to the contact ID. That's it, very simple. And then update the contact, which saves it, and then perform the little step of the progress bar. So let me just run this, right? So run now. There it is. So it took 1.39 seconds to update the 200 contacts in the table and populate a field with them. So inside the scripting, just to bring this around, this script, it's not data-driven, it's not event-driven, it's just a script that you want to do to clean up data and do things like that. That can be handled inside of here also. Okay, let's close this down. And let's look at some of the other examples that we have for us, right? So let's go to this example. We'll say buttons. So I have an example online, and as it says, it's buttons, and it's just that. It is buttons. So let's go into the designer. Now, what we have, we did look at buttons over here, and I did show you how you buttons to create a script. But what we have inside of here is some buttons that are more customized. So up here, I have a button that says create an activity. If I bring that button down to the screen, it's not script driven because it knows we're going to create an activity. And what it does is it says, okay, well, of course you can, change the text, new contact button. We can select the image and put a check mark in there. But what's going to happen under this button event, it's going to schedule a call and it's going to edit the activity, right? So that's it. So that's the button. Now, I can do things more like, oh, well, don't edit the activity. Use these values, say, well, the start date is, tomorrow, or the start date is today plus 5 days into the future, and it's calendar days or business days. So 5 business days in the future, I want to schedule the appointment at 2 o'clock. And the appointment is going to be regarding, new lead. And thereby, what I've done is created an event-driven button for the automation process. So I'll say OK to that, and there's my button. On this screen, again, this is a demo database. You can go and look at this. So if I highlight Run Script, and I go to the properties, well, here's an example. If 1 equals 1, say the script. So run the test, and you can see, oh, it returns a value of 1. And what this little script is showing you, you could say, hey, if state equals New Jersey, for our example, say, please schedule follow-up. So this is for your end users, that when they click on the button or an event happens, they're notified saying, oh, please schedule this follow-up. Let's look at something else. Open a calculator. Say we need a calculator occasionally. So I have a button here. Let's go to properties. And the property is process start and calc exe. Let's go and run that. And there it is. So I open up my calculator. So I now have a calculator on top. If I wanted to open up Microsoft Word, same thing. Just run the test, and there's Microsoft Word opening up. Again, what this is showing us is that we can attach scripts to the operating system, to the .NET architecture. We can attach scripts to the ACT SDK, or, of course, attach the scripts to Impact. Let's see. Oh, printing. Generating and printing documents and emailing documents is a rather important part of automation. So I have one here. It says, create an email using the email body template. I'm just going to go into properties. That's what I named it. That's, I could call it XXX. There's a little preview. I have the image as an icon. And on this template, here, let's cancel out of here. This is print email, this button here. So if I drag this button over to here, again, that's the properties of it. So if I highlight here and went to properties, you can see that the properties of this type of button is different than the properties of this type of button. All right, so let's go to the properties. And what it's saying is we have a template, email, our quote. So we're going to email our quote. This is for the users, QUOTE. And these are all your templates online. Some of you will recognize these are ACT templates, but whatever template you have online. So I'm going to just use email body here. And what I'm going to do is say the document name is taken from the contact table. So it'll label a document before we send it out to them. And then what action do we want to take? We want to email this as the body, right? So we're selecting from this button that we dragged on. We're giving the end users the button name. We can give it an image. So let's use the red image. Then we're going to say the template, we use our letter template. And then we're going to email it as the body. So again, look at some of these inside of here. And if you look at any of the other ones, you'll see that these are already done for you, and you can test them out. Okay, let's look at some of the other examples we have. This one's called No Bottom Tabs. It's one of these features that we have inside of ACT and Impact. Is see, we can get rid of the tab at the bottom. You may decide as a designer to have all the lists, like this is a list for record manager. This is a list for opportunities. I clicked on it. It took me to the opportunities. So you can have a layout with no tabs at the bottom. Let's look at the next one. Well, if you have no tabs at the bottom, you might want to put a tab screen at the top. So this is just an example of a tab screen, a tab at the bottom. So I have status here with fields, and I have rentals. So these are all the rentals. And if I go back to, let's go back to my record. I think if we just go back to 2. Right. So there I have all these rentals attached to me. And so those rentals appear in my tab at the top. Let's go to theme underlined. Now this is a theme underlined. Again, it shows you some of the theming. This has a lot more power in the underline when we're not colorizing the background. So let me just go and show you how this theme works real quick. If we go to impact, right here we have, address, city, state, zip, and everything else. Let's go to apply a theme. And if I say I want rounded theme, right? So here's rounded is selected. I apply the rounded theme. And there it is. All of our controls are rounded. But you may want a more modern looking background. So that's where if we said apply a theme, and then we said give me the underline theme, and I want the underlines to be blue, and save. There's underline. Now what's happening with this theme, if we go into scripting, we have a background color event. That's why the white wasn't occurring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this background color event. And then one of the reasons I wanted to show you this is that you could be working on a script and not have it public or published yet. You just say, well, it's not active, so don't run that script until I finalize my testing. So now I have a underlying theme, and I'm going to say save. It's going to load. And here's my underlying theme. So as I go and I navigate, you can see it's much more modern design, and it doesn't have the event of changing the background colors. And on these themes, which I love, is that when you highlight it, you'll see that it goes double line. So it's a single underline theme, but when you set focus to it, it highlights the focus with the thicker underline. That's the theme underline. Let's go to workflow. Okay, this is kind of going to round off this whole webinar. So we talked about doing event-driven, data-driven, button-driven automations in here. And these all wrap into what we call automation. All these scripts wrap into what we call automation. And remember, I created different buttons over here. And on this layout, I have a button called, create a history, right? So that button opens up and creates a history. And if I look at these different buttons, I have a button that says email documents. I have a button that says, create a mortgage. So I have, remember the mortgage table? I say, I want to create a mortgage for this client. So I don't have to go and change my interface, find my mortgage tab, right click to say create pop-up menu to get to new. I can have all that under a very simple button click. And the mortgage is, 100,000, and we got to put some values in here in order for it to calculate our month, 4.75, and there it is, calculated our month. Well, again, this is a part of the automation. What I'm going to show you in here, let's go into our designer. And inside of our designer, I'm going to take these buttons out for a second. And I'm just going to get rid of this. Right? So again, these were buttons that I created. And if I highlight a button, go to properties, it does that. If I highlight this button, email a doc, again, it's that print document button. And I can click on any one of those individually. But what I want to do is all in a workflow pattern. So if I go over here to buttons, at the very bottom of this, you see workflow pattern. I'm going to drag this onto the screen. I'm going to make it taller, right? Tall enough to handle all these buttons. And I'm going to put these buttons all inside of here. Now, what's going to happen is when I run the workflow, it's going to do each one of these buttons inside of this workflow container. So if you want the email documents to be first, well, you can bring the email documents up here. And actually, they'll be second. Let's make email documents first. And then to create history, then record a call. Again, whatever you could dream of, it could be a button, it could be a custom script, It can be open up the driving directions to it. But we have them all done inside of here. So now what happens, just close this down. I want to say run the workflow. So it's going to say run all of them, yes. So the first thing that it's doing is it's emailing the document out for me. It's packaging it up. It's using the template. It's converting it to HTML. It's attaching it to, and there it is. And it was a PDF. And if I want to look at that, I can just say open that up. And there is that template I did. All automatic for it. I had it set to preview it before I send it. You could set it to automatically send it. So let's just say to you. But what happened next? New history is up here. So the create history event just went. So I'm just going to say cancel. No, I don't want to create new history. Then the third event is create the mortgage. There it goes, create some mortgage. And as you can see how these event-driven, script-driven events are now a whole part of the automation. So I'm going to say okay to that. Oh, this third one, it's opening up. Oh, attach a file. So say I'm working on a mortgage and I need his payroll, his W-2 or something like that. So I'm just going to say, yeah, attach that file. Create the call. Where are we at now? I think we're pretty much all the way down to schedule a call. The last thing about this is that this is 100% designable. You design your own workflows. But what's cool about it too is, say you came along and you ran that workflow, and I have my phone calls on my calendar, and I have my histories recorded and everything else, and he calls up and says, you had my email address wrong, right? It's not Will Farrell at SwiftPage email. Didn't know he was in the demo database. On here, I can, and I change his email, I can resend that just by clicking on any one of the events inside of here. So if this, let's just delete it, and I'll say this is sales at impactact.com. That's his email address. All right, I have your new email address. Let me send you the documents. I can just click one of the events out of the whole workflow pattern without running the whole workflow pattern again. And oh, I didn't save it. It's still there, but let's close, save changes, and let's save as record. So now it's saved, and then we email. And there it is. Sales and Impact Act and everything else, like I said. All right. So I just want to leave you with that. Again, I'm going to send everybody a link to download the demo database. You can come back and review this webinar. And if you have any questions for me, please email me at sales@impactact.com or give us a call at 973-625-1119. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Bye.